Hello and welcome back to the Human Echoes recap for Better Call Saul Season 2, Episode 6. This one's called Bali High. And if we've had Mike-centric episodes and Kim-centric episodes for the last couple of episodes, it seems like this one is bringing it back, not to Jimmy, but bringing the show to a point where all of these characters and all of their plot lines are of equal importance. And before I start with the specific recap of the show, I just gotta mention that I had a thought that the Better Call Saul in the title, Saul Goodman is a character that we know from Breaking Bad, and so we assume that Jimmy McGill is our the protagonist. And that's true to a point. But if you look at this like an ensemble show, Better Call Saul isn't just from Jimmy's point of view of, how does Jimmy become Saul Goodman? Why does he need to call Saul Goodman as a character that he makes up? But it's also, I think, becoming a exploration of why these other people need to call Saul. Why does Mike need to call Saul? Why does Kim need to call Saul? Why do these people need Saul Goodman? Not Jimmy McGill. Why do they need Saul Goodman? And this episode, I think, brings us one step closer to all of that. We start off with Jimmy McGill in his wonderful corporate apartment. We've talked about this in the last episode, how he has it made, how he has it all. He's got a nice place, nice bed. It's all set up. It's all clean and shiny and squeaky and everything's cool, and he can't sleep. He's laying awake at 1 a.m. The editing in this scene is really, really cool. It's sort of a frenetic, almost a chaotic edit a little bit. It's not a montage exactly. It is, from the literal sense of the word, a montage, but it doesn't feel like other montages. It feels like just smashed together pieces of Jimmy's consciousness as his mind won't shut up and won't stop, and he's here in this place that ostensibly should be where he's comfortable, and eventually he leaves. And you're thinking to yourself, where is he going? Is he going out to get like a snack or midnight, run for something or some kind of sleeping aid? But no, he goes back to the nail salon, which for one thing, at first I was like, is he breaking in? But he has a key, and as much as I think that he's perfectly willing to lie and cheat and break the law to get what he needs, I don't think that he is, he's gonna screw over the lady that was his landlord for the number of years. So, that was interesting to me. And then you realize, he's been keeping up his rent on this place, because he goes and he lays down, and he grabs some, cucumber water or whatever from the thing and like drags out his bed in his tiny little crawl space of an apartment that was also his office, pushes the desk back and lays down, and he's finally able to sleep. And we really see, this is what Jimmy has been craving all this time. For whatever reason, this is where he's comfortable. He's not comfortable in the polished corporate environment. He's not comfortable in the nice apartment. This dilapidated, rundown place that we felt like Jimmy McGill was stuck. And I'm sure he felt like, I'm stuck here. I can't get out. And he worked really hard to get somewhere different. And now we see he's stuck, but not in the way we thought he was. He's stuck in his mind. He can't leave this place, because this is what I think really it's not the tiny small office that was what he craves. The tiny small office represents to him the days when he was a maverick and he was able to live on his own and do his own thing and not be subject to the whims of weird people at Davis and Maine. And so he's happy enough kind of going back and living that life. And more to the point, we see when the nail salon lady comes in, we find out, he has been paying his rent. It's unclear exactly how long he would have been out of there timeline-wise if he just had left it recently and maybe he was still paid up, or if but in my mind, he's continued to keep this as a backup plan. He's not fully invested in the world of Davis and Maine. He's not fully jumping into the pool of this corporate apartment. He, in the back of his mind, still is hanging on to his old life for one reason or another. And that I thought was fascinating, because you'd think he would want to move on. You'd think that he would want to do something better, even if he wasn't going to stick with the corporate job. He could use that money to go somewhere else, do something else. But no, that old life is what appeals to him, and that's what still calls to him, and that's really interesting to me. And so you see him, and then you see him go back to, of course, the corporate life that he is sort of his prison cell now, where now he feels like he's really stuck, that this is something that he can't get out of. And I don't know, it's an interesting dichotomy, it's an interesting idea that Jimmy can't leave this behind, that this is something that he's mentally shackled to, that he has built this world up that he built for himself so much in his head that the better life doesn't appeal to him anymore. And we get an interesting mirror of that with Kim, because we see her in the better life that she wanted. She said, I'm going to fight, I'm going to get my job back. You don't need to help me, Jimmy. I can do it myself. And she does it, right? She fights, she gets the contract, she talks to Chuck. Chuck says, hey, I'll have a word with Howard. And from what I can tell, he actually has the word with Howard. Again, we don't see it happen, but she's back in an office, unpacking her things. And Howard comes to pick her up. And there is a great, great long one shot that we see of them walking through the office where he doesn't say a word to her. And I think that there is a fascination with the long oneers that we've seen in television in the past. And I'm fine with it. There's nothing wrong with a long shot, but sometimes I think people think that a long shot is just, they want it just for the sake of it being cool. And that's not why this is here. This is here to really show us exactly how agonizing this tension is between Howard and Kim, because the silence is deafening here. Howard not talking to her, and she even at one point says to him, like, should I do such and such? I forget exactly. It's some menial thing that she needs an answer for, just to open up some kind of level of conversation. He gives her a one-word answer and shuts back down. And we're back on this incredibly long walk all the way through the Davis and Maine offices into the conference room, where then Howard's like, oh, hey guys, where he's meeting with the other, the contract that Kim had put together. And you really see that Kim has her job. She has what she wanted. She's back in the firm. She technically is still able to, get back to her job, but it's not what she wanted. It's not what she thought she wanted, what she thought she was going to get, because now that she's back in it, she's seeing that things are trickier than she assumed that they would be. And as if to add insult to injury, after that, we see her in the courtroom arguing something for Davis and Maine, and she does a great job. They just drop you right into this argument. There's not a setup ahead of time of, here's what's going on, here's the stakes, here's how likely one side or the other person is to win. It's just a judge, two lawyers on one side, Kim by herself on the other side, the two lawyers for Schweikart and whatever, I forget the full name of the place, but the firm that's representing Sandpiper, they're arguing against releasing arguing for releasing certain patient medical records. She's arguing against on the basis of privacy and stuff. And you get through all that argument, and she does a great job. And they do a great job. It's one of those, it's not like somebody's dropping the ball here, but the judge says, there's precedence, I'm leaning towards requiring the medical records to be released. She's losing that fight. And the other lawyer, after their arguments in front of the judge, I forget what the technical word, deposition, I think. You know what? I'm not sure. I'm not a lawyer. But after their, little thing that they went through there, he comes up to her and he says, I noticed you're by yourself. I noticed that they kind of left you hanging out to dry. And Kim doesn't say anything. She's not like, yeah, man, I'm so mad. But we understand as after the scene is played out that she wasn't supposed to be alone. That it was something that Howard should have been there for, helping her out. But he just dropped her into a situation that he knew was a losing situation because A, he knew it was a losing situation. And also B, because I think he's still mad at her. Or at least doesn't trust her. And he's still letting her hang out to dry. And Schweikart, which is the last name of the guy, I didn't realize he was the partner in the law firm somehow. I thought maybe he was just some, kind of schlub who was working within the... But apparently he's one of the names on the banner. He invites her out to lunch. And they have drinks, or he has a drink, which is interesting setup there because it's a specific cup it comes in, and that cup comes in later in the episode. Not really a big deal, but just so you know, oh, she's drinking alcohol now later. But they set it up where he's talking to her and he says, I've been where you've been. I was working my way up the law ladder once as well. I got left hanging out to dry by my firm. The senior officers or senior guy sent me. I thought he was going to be there to help me out by my side, and we were going to fight this thing, but nope, it was just me, and I had to fight by myself. And she says, well, that's great, man. Where is this going? And where it's going is he's offering her a job. And I don't know what to make of this, and I'm not sure Kim does either. On the one hand, it doesn't seem like that this is going to be a huge blow to HHM to lose Kim. She's a hard worker, but there's a lot of smart lawyers there. There's a lot of good people there. So it doesn't feel like the kind of thing that is them sniping her away and doing something that would hurt the case. That doesn't seem like it makes any sense. But on the other hand, it also doesn't make any sense. I don't know. The only thing I can think of that makes logical sense is that they legitimately see something of value in her and legitimately think she's being underused. And they even say, hey, obviously, morally and legally, we can't have you on the Davis and Maine case anyway. Not Davis and Maine, the Sandpiper case anyway, because you were on the other side of that. We wouldn't ask you for any information. Assuming that that's the case, this guy seems like kind of a greaseball, so maybe he would finesse the rules there a little bit, but assuming that he's telling her the truth about not wanting inside information about the opposition's strategy, and I don't know how that would work out anyway, because Kim doesn't seem like the kind of person, even if she jumps ship at Davis and Maine, doesn't seem like the kind of girl who would divulge that kind of information. It's possible he just completely read her wrong, but I think that the only conclusion I can come to with the information I have currently is that they legitimately like her as a lawyer, and they think, okay, we can do something with this girl. She can, be a real asset. She's not and knowing that she's in a vulnerable position because he is able to see that she's being hung out to dry for her actions, and she doesn't know what to do. So what she does in a response to that is she cons somebody, which is interesting because, again, it's a mirror of what Jimmy had done just at the very beginning of the episode, right? Jimmy goes back to his Slippin' Jimmy location, for lack of a better word, his time when he was a maverick on his own, and we see that when Jimmy shared being a maverick with Kim, when he shared that con that they did in episode 2 with her, that struck a chord with her maybe the same way that it struck with him, in that she feels comfortable here. Maybe not with that, but with him. And so she goes back to that. She gets a guy on the line. She's not able to do it on her own, but she's able to kind of get the setup, and she calls him, and he's in the middle of some insufferable meeting with his, handlers at Davis and Maine. He has a great line where he says, it's my grandma. She's old. And just sort of runs out. Which I love the idea that he's thinking ahead, like, I might need to pull the death card later. I'm going to save the death card. But, and of course, he's under the gun again with the, his babysitter woman, who is still, to me, I think that this performance is brilliant and nuanced in a way. It's not super nuanced. It's not like there's this giant gray area. she needs to fill this role of being slightly annoying and slightly too chipper, and just, we need to be on Jimmy's side here with whatever decision he's going to make eventually to leave Davis and Maine. But on the other hand, she knows how just to go far enough, in my opinion. The actress who plays his handler goes just far enough to be annoying, but not quite far enough to be a caricature. And I love that. I love that she's able to walk that balance and find that kind of just in the sweet spot where that's a great, memorable character and doesn't get a lot of screen time, but just really nails what she needs to do really well. And Jimmy shows up. Him and Kim pull the con, and here is a little bit of a plot detail here that I latched onto, and I don't. Maybe it's just a coincidence, but he has the guy make out the check to Ice Station Zebra Associates, which Ice Station Zebra is the movie that him and Kim were watching when he got the phone call about the ad. And then later on in Breaking Bad, we know that he has Walt make out a check to Ice Station Zebra Associates. So we can see the genesis of the idea happening in Breaking Bad. I assume that Ice Station Zebra Associates is a real shell corporation that he has set up. Here, I think it's just a phony thing that they told the guy to write the check to so that they could, I don't think they actually want to cash the check. But, especially having seen the teaser for next week, I have myself thinking, does something happen because of this con? Does this come back to bite them, where they have to keep playing this, where they have to keep acting the part and create an actual Ice Station Zebra account for them to deposit this check in? I don't know. I don't know that that's the case, but it seems kind of likely that that's at least one direction they could go. But regardless, him and Kim go off and do their thing, and it really seems like they're happy together. And we have that moment, and I forgot to mention it in the episode where it happens, but Jimmy gets he has a nice new car, his corporate, Bentley or whatever it is, something German. And he's been driving around, and he got rid of the Esteem. But the cup that Kim gave him in that episode, the world's second best lawyer cup for his birthday or whatever it was, or maybe it was again, I don't remember the specifics, but she gave him this cup, and it's sort of symbolic of their relationship, right? It's their cup. She gave it to him. It means something to him. And he couldn't fit that cup in the cup holder. And it's been a recurring little motif where he's trying to fit that cup down in the cup holder. In realistic speaking terms, how would you have a car like that didn't have a standard size cup holder? I don't know. But it's metaphor, guys, so we can let it go. And so we see him and Kim kind of parting ways, and she drives off to go to her job, and he's standing in the parking lot of the nail salon, and you see him decide, I'm going to make this work, because the cup doesn't fit. He goes and he grabs the tire iron out of the trunk and just rips open the cup holder so that there's room. Boom! Chunks that cup down there. And it's part and parcel with the conversation he has earlier in that scene with Kim, because Kim talks to him about, she knows him. She knows that he didn't want to go to work at Davis and Maine. She knows that he wants to do this con man job. And she's saying, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I didn't know what I wanted. You knew what you wanted, and I told you to give it up, and now I don't even know what I want. And Jimmy, I think, maybe knowing that Kim wants what she thinks she wants, even though she does not free to admit it to herself, tells him, oh no, listen, Davis and Maine is great. That's absolutely where I want to be. You didn't push me there at all. I did it for myself. Look at this great car. But it's not true. I don't think that Jimmy really feels that way. We know that he doesn't feel that way. I mean, he's going back to sleep at the nail salon. And so it's interesting to see him give that reinforcement to Kim. I don't think he wants Kim going down the same road that he went down. And that's fascinating to me. That, I think, tells me a lot about Jimmy and maybe predicts some problems that him and Kim could have in the future, because he's afraid, I think, of corrupting her a little bit. Not so now. He wants to share what he does somewhat with her, but I don't know that he wants her to, for lack of a better word, get down in the dirt and roll around with him. But not like that. He wants her to get around. He wants to roll around with her in the dirt, but not metaphorically. And so there's that hesitation, but you can see that he's like, I'm gonna make this work. And so he takes the Davis and Maine car, and the car represents Davis and Maine. He takes the cup and he pops the cup holder open to make room for the cup, to make room in his life for Kim. And that wasn't the direction I thought they were going to go with it. You know, I kind of expected something a little bit more grandiose, a little bit more, a big crash or something that he could have avoided, but he didn't, or letting somebody, rip up the car, or something, as he walks away from Davis and Maine. And we see here that maybe his resolve is stronger than we thought. Maybe he's willing to try harder than I expected to make Davis and Maine work so that Kim will still respect him. And I think that he thinks that but he's willing to cheat Davis and Maine. Again, in the metaphor, he's breaking the car. The car's still intact, but it's not 100% the way he left it. So that's where Jimmy's at in this episode. The other plot line we're still dealing with is Mike. He's still off doing his own thing. And he's still dealing with the offer that, not Tuco, Hector, I want to say, Salamanca made to him in the previous episode. He basically said, no, I'm not doing it. He comes home at the beginning of his part of the episode, finds a guy waiting on the step, and is like, what are you doing here? And the guy says, we made you that offer. Don't you remember? We're scary guys. And we're scary guys, so what do you say? And he says, no. And then we see him pull a little bit of Mike voodoo, where he goes and gets some carbon paper at possibly the most outdated stationery store in the world that still sells carbon paper. But he gets some carbon paper and puts it down underneath his welcome mat. And we see that pay off. We see him come back from his job later at night. He pulls up the welcome mat. He sees the footprints on the welcome mat that aren't his. And we get a really tense kind of scene of him searching his apartment. It's another one of those long shots. Again, builds up a lot of great tension. And he finds the guys. He finds that he, turns on the television, draws them out. They pop out. He disarms them. And again, we see that this is a Mike that is not willing to go whole hog with the violence. And to a certain extent, that's understandable, because this is the Salamancas, and probably even Mike, I don't think, is really excited about the idea of going to war with the Salamanca clan. On the other hand, it feels like a lot of restraint. It feels like that Mike is still in this, I'm not willing to kill willy-nilly yet, just because, even though he has, and even though we know that he can, I think that he's still not the Mike that we know in Breaking Bad, to the point where after he gets them out of the house, and has a great line about, they tell him, we were sent here to scare you, and he says, well, next time try harder, and he slams the door behind him. But we see his hands shaking. And I think part of it's a little bit of fear, and part of it is just the stress of what has gone down and what has happened. And I think that Mike is not fully formed as the half sociopath. I don't even think he's ever a sociopath. That's not correct. But the sort of cold-blooded killer we see him become in Breaking Bad. And he's really struggling with this. And the other thing that I thought was really interesting here was I didn't anticipate how Nacho was going to play into all this, because in my mind, Nacho should be mad at Mike because he's got this offer coming from Hector. But then I remembered, and I'm just dumb, I guess. But I remember that Nacho has to play within Hector's rules too, because he essentially works for Hector. He worked with Tuco, under Tuco, and Tuco is Hector's nephew. So it's not like he can just go off and be like, Mike, you said you were going to get rid of him, and now you can't get rid of him. He's got to continue playing his part. He's got to continue being the thug who is ostensibly interested in getting Nacho out, despite the fact that that was not the plan at all. And so Mike goes into this meeting with Hector, meets up, sees Nacho. Long day, guys. For those of you who don't know, I'm releasing this late because camping trip and all kinds of mess this week, but it's going up and we'll be back on schedule this next week. But he goes into the meeting with Hector, and it's just kind of a great scene between these two sort of old veteran actors and old veteran, kind of operators in the scheme of the story playing each other. At this point, I'm pretty sure Hector knows that Mike is not exactly what he appears, although I don't know that he suspects that Mike was playing him 100%. And he comes in, and they've threatened Mike's daughter-in-law and granddaughter, which is a huge deal. The twins show up, the twins, Tuco's cousins, the cousins, not the twins. You're stupid, Albert. The cousins show up, and they have a great scene where they're menacing on the rooftop, like looking down at his granddaughter in the pool, and he like looks back at him, and they're like, "You better." I mean, they don't say anything, but the very, very explicit intention of that is, you take the offer, or the people who you care about will get hurt. You, Mr. Tough Guy or whatever, you ain't tough with us. So he takes the offer, he said, and they'd offered him originally $5,000. And he goes in the restaurant, he sits down, and the guy says, now the money's off the table at this point because you've been dragging your feet. And Mike says, "Nuh-uh, give me $50,000. Which I thought was great. And he kind of has a little bit of a Mexican standoff with actual Mexicans in that moment. And it was, Hector looks at Mike and he realizes that Mike has the balls to pull the trigger, or at least is crazy enough to pull the trigger, and also kind of respects that he has the balls to ask. I don't think Hector encounters too many people who are willing to up the ante from $0 to $50,000. But Mike, in his mind, is thinking, that's the amount I should have gotten. All right, I was gonna kill him. I would have got $50,000. I didn't kill him. You're gonna give me $50,000 because now he's still alive, and I deserve that. So Hector gives him the money. He says, "All right, you got balls." And so Mike, essentially, I think, is going to take the deal. We haven't seen how that's going to play out. That might be the merging again of him and Jimmy's plot lines. Although at this point, I'm not really concerned that they're off doing their own thing. But that definitely could play into that. And he goes back to his house, and Nacho makes the money delivery. And again, we see that Nacho isn't playing hardball with Mike. He's not mad at Mike directly anyway. He says, "Hey, didn't work out. Here's your money." And Mike says, "Okay, well, here's $25,000 back to you because that's what you gave me." And Hector, it's an interesting moment. I almost would have, if Hector hadn't taken the money and said, "Hey, you'll, owe me a favor," that's where I was expecting that scene to go. I was expecting Hector to say, "No, you hang on to this. You earned it, first of all, and B, you can owe me a favor. We're still gunning for Tuco one way or the other." But he doesn't. He takes the money back, and I think Nacho is an interesting character because he seems like he could be pretty ruthless. But in this instance, I think he like Hector, really does come to respect Mike. He understands and respects that Mike is a guy with principles and with rules and who plays by those rules. And I like to think that Hector has appreciation for Mike, let's say, that he's not going to just treat him like any other, toadstool gangster, whatever that means. Just saying words. Like I said, I'm kind of tired, guys. But he's not going to look at him as a pawn anymore, and I think probably will include him in a little bit more of his planning and respect his ideas and stuff a little bit more, maybe. With Nacho, it's almost impossible to tell for sure, but that's kind of the impression I got. And that is the close of the episode. So this one was really interesting because we got everything back together. And speaking of getting it all back together, speaking of everybody coming back and kind of having an equal footing with Mike and Kim and Jimmy, it might be a spoiler, for those of you who don't watch the coming next on Better Call Saul part, if you skip that, then skip this. But in the coming next for Better Call Saul, I think they're tricking us, guys. They show Jimmy suiting up with the Saul suit, with the brightly colored suit. We see him with the inflatable Statue of Liberty looking at the shopping mall where he will eventually be Saul Goodman. We see all that stuff, and I don't think that Jimmy is going to become Saul Goodman in the next episode, but I think that Saul Goodman is going to be created in the next episode. Here's my prediction. Based on what we saw, I think that what's going to happen is that Jimmy is going to have to create a persona for one of his cons that may have backfired, or something that may have backfired. And understanding the kind of persona that the people he's going to be dealing with will respect creates this slick kind of underhanded lawyer stereotype that is Saul Goodman for a con. And he rents out, the storefront for 1 month or 2 months or whatever, or maybe he just moves in. And he has the suit made and everything, but it's either to save his neck from something or to help an old friend out, but it's not. I don't think he's quitting Davis and Maine and just becoming Saul Goodman in the next episode of the series. I think they're faking us out, guys. But even so, and if I'm wrong, by all means, that's great. That's just sort of where my mind went with where I felt like that this was going, because it seems like a giant jump from I'm gonna make both lives work to I'm gonna become Saul Goodman and have my own. It doesn't feel like it would organically go there. Although again, I could be surprised. But either way, I'm pumped. I'm pumped for the next episode, maybe more than I have been for any other upcoming episodes except for the premiere, just because it's back. I want to see this character come to be. I'm so excited to see that come into being. We've seen Jimmy McGill create characters before, right? We've seen him create the Matlock lawyer for the old people, and we've seen him create the Hamlin lawyer because he doesn't like Hamlin. And so this chameleon thing he does is something we've experienced before, and now it's all gonna come together. It's all coming together. Saul Goodman gonna be Saul Goodman for a little bit, and we're gonna see that seed planted, and it is going to grow. Looking forward to it. So pumped. Anyway, for those of you watching the video, hit that like and subscribe button if you liked it and you want to see more. And we will see you next week with another episode of the Better Call Saul Human Echoes recap.